The specialist fixed his eyes on the monitor, his complexion paling. His hands hovered above the keys. This had nothing to do with diabetes, not even remotely. I'm Walter Crane. For 20 years, I've chased down medical misdiagnoses situations where the health system let patients down, not out of ill intent, but because of unchecked assumptions. And this, it turned out to be a failure right down to the molecules. In this clip, you'll watch a standard HbA1c screening spiral into a race against time for answers. You'll be introduced to the man who was told his disease couldn't be reversed, until it turned out it could. And you'll discover how the cure that was right there all along might upend everything we know about diabetes treatment. Disclaimer: this documentary protects the patient's identity by using a pseudonym. No actual names, places, or identifying specifics are revealed. The tale kicks off in a clinic exam room where Mark, we'll call him Mark, clutched the armrests of his seat. His blood sugar had just jumped once more. The doctor's warning rang in his mind. This is diabetes, it's progressive, there's no turning back. But Mark's lab results painted another picture. His endocrinologist, Dr. Elena Vasquez, had run into this scenario before type 2 diabetes, a metabolic condition marked by insulin resistance that can be tamed with drugs and lifestyle tweaks. Still, a nagging feeling tugged. The public story most folks hear about type 2 diabetes sounds like a one-size-fits-all script. Eat less sugar, exercise more, and the disease will reverse. That narrative makes good copy for headlines, yet it sweeps two big facts under the rug. First, the disease isn't a single pathway, it's a whole spectrum of metabolic dysfunction that varies from person to person. Second, the usual diagnostic toolkit, fasting glucose, HbA1c, and a quick dietary checklist rarely grabs the hidden drivers that make each case unique. When the CDC says roughly 34.2 million Americans are living with diabetes, the sheer number can feel almost inevitable. Source: CDC. Still, that same report points out that remission is possible if someone sticks with sustained lifestyle tweaks and drops weight. The snag is that lifestyle changes often get tossed out as generic advice, ignoring the fact that one person's reaction to carbs, fats, and protein can be wildly different from their neighbor's. Standard diabetes narratives also lean on population-level risk factors, BMI, family history, and age to decide who gets treatment. Those cues help with screening, but they don't explain why a few patients on a low-carb plan see dramatic HbA1c drops while others only inch forward. The missing piece: personalized metabolic testing. Continuous glucose monitoring, CGM, serves up real-time data on postprandial spikes, and metabolic profiling can lay bare insulin sensitivity, hepatic glucose output, and lipid oxidation rates. Without those tools, doctors are basically flying blind, handing out a diet that might suit the average Joe but miss the mark for the individual. Think about the diabetes prevention program, that landmark trial that showed an intensive lifestyle push cut the incidence of type 2 diabetes by 58% over 3 years. Source: DPP. The study zeroed in on weight loss and modest calorie restriction, yet it didn't customize macronutrient mixes to match participants' metabolic phenotypes. The outcome was impressive, but it still leaves a question hanging. Could a tighter, more precise dietary prescription crank that benefit up even higher? Enter the era of CGM-guided, low-carb, high-protein protocols. A 12-month randomized trial pitted a low-carbohydrate diet, less 30 g-carbs per day, against a standard low-fat regimen. Folks on the low-carb side logged an average HbA1c reduction of 1.2%, and 53% managed to get HbA1c 6.5% without any meds. Source: low-carb RCT. Importantly, the researchers also gathered CGM data, which showed glucose spikes were tamed not just on fasting days, but throughout the entire eating window. Those results illustrate how a focused macronutrient shift can deliver remission-level glycemic control when you pair it with real-time monitoring. A systematic review of dietary patterns adds weight to that observation. Researchers found that both low-carbohydrate and Mediterranean diets were consistently linked to higher rates of type 2 diabetes remission across multiple cohorts. Source: systematic review. The review didn't pin down a single remission percentage, but the steady signal across diverse studies suggests diet quality, especially cutting carbs while keeping protein adequate, plays a pivotal role in flipping hyperglycemia for certain metabolic subtypes. The American Diabetes Association's 2023 Standards of Care now say outright that sustained weight loss and dietary tweaks can usher in diabetes remission for some individuals. Source: ADA. The phrase, "some individuals," is a subtle nod that remission isn't a universal guarantee, reinforcing why a personalized approach matters. When clinicians bring metabolic profiling like measuring fasting insulin, C-peptide, and lipid oxidation into the mix, they can spot who's likely to thrive on a low-carb, high-protein plan versus who might do better with a Mediterranean or plant-forward approach. Why does this matter for the everyday viewer? Because the average person scrolling a health article runs into a blanket recommendation and assumes it fits them. In reality, a low-carb, high-protein strategy can be a targeted tool for a subset of patients whose insulin resistance stems mainly from carbohydrate overload, liver fat buildup, or shaky beta cell function. CGM data can tell you whether a specific meal spikes glucose past your personal threshold, letting you tweak your diet in near real time instead of waiting for quarterly HbA1c numbers. The emerging evidence therefore reshapes the conversation. Diabetes isn't just a disease of too much sugar, but a heterogeneous metabolic condition that reacts to personalized nutritional interventions. By weaving metabolic profiling and CGM into routine care, clinicians can move past the generic, low-sugar, mantra and prescribe a diet that matches each patient's unique glucose dynamics. The payoff is a higher chance of hitting remission, less reliance on drugs, and a clearer road for those who have been told, just lose weight. In short, standard diabetes narratives give a handy entry point, but fall short of the precision needed for true remission. Metabolic testing and continuous glucose monitoring bridge that gap, and recent trials back up that a low-carb, high-protein diet can spark remission-level outcomes when the metabolic context is right. The next wave of diabetes care will probably be defined not by one-size-fits-all advice, but by data-driven, individualized nutrition plans that honor the biochemical diversity of each patient. Beat text pop. The plan puts a hard stop on net carbs, just 30 g each day. We aim for protein at 1.2, 1.5 g per kilogram of your ideal weight, keeping muscle intact as your system flips over to burning fat. The fats, think olive oil, avocado, a handful of nuts, and fatty fish fuel plus those good omega-3s. You'll eat within a 12-hour window, then let the night fast work its magic on insulin sensitivity. First up, folks get a baseline check fasting glucose, HbA1c, and a CGM sensor slapped onto the upper arm. Within just 48 hours of kicking off the low-carb, high-protein plan, the CGM trace flattens out. Those spikes that used to top 180 mg/dl disappear, and the 24-hour average lands somewhere between 90 and 110 mg/dl. Over a 12-month trial, the low-carb crowd shaved HbA1c down by about 1.2% on average, and 53% hit below 6.5%, all without meds. Source: Diabetes Care, 2020. Step 2 brings daily weigh-ins and a modest 500 kcal deficit to keep the pounds dropping steadily. According to the ADA Standards of Care, 2023, sticking with weight loss through diet can actually trigger remission. Source: ADA, 2023. They point out that even a modest drop, roughly 5–10% of your body weight, can dramatically boost glycemic control. When the scale goes down, insulin demand eases and the pancreas finally gets a break. By week 4, most folks talk about a new baseline, where post-meal glucose barely wiggles. Now the CGM graphs draw a smooth line, nothing like the jagged spikes you saw before. Patient stories put the numbers where they belong on paper. Maria, 52, a former accountant, says, "Every time I ate bread, my glucose would jump. My monitor screamed 160, 170. 2 weeks into the plan, her numbers steadied, and her doctor noted HbA1c sliding from 7.8% down to 6.2%. 6 weeks later, the CGM barely broke 120 mg/dl, and she celebrated a whole month free of diabetes meds. Her story mirrors the Diabetes Prevention Program, which showed an intensive lifestyle push cut type 2 diabetes incidence by 58% over 3 years. Source: NCBI 2007. Phase 3 throws in moderate aerobic workouts 3 times a week, plus 2 resistance sessions. Exercise pulls glucose into cells without insulin, reinforcing that metabolic reset. A systematic review discovered that low-carb and Mediterranean eating patterns consistently pair with higher remission rates when you add lifestyle tweaks. Source: MDPI 2020. The ADA also advises at least 150 minutes of moderate activity each week to keep remission going. Source: ADA 2023. Across the group, average HbA1c dropped from 7.5% to 6.3% in just 3 months, nudging many into the non-diabetic zone without drugs. Source: Diabetes Care 2020. Finally, quarterly counseling fine-tunes your macros and tackles the psychosocial hurdles, keeping remission momentum alive and steering clear of rebound. The CDC points out that roughly 34.2 million Americans live with diabetes, but remission is within reach when you stick to lifestyle changes. Source: CDC 2022. Maria's Story Clinical Stats, CGM Graphs, Personal Win shows a disciplined low-carb, high-protein plan can flip a disease trajectory in weeks, not years. With ongoing monitoring, patients hold on to those gains, proving disciplined nutrition and lifestyle can turn a chronic disease into something reversible. Blood slides under the lens, the endocrinologist's pen freezing mid-stroke. What if the next big leap in diabetes care isn't another pill, but a tighter focus on how our bodies actually burn fuel? The data's piling up. A serious lifestyle overhaul slashed type 2 diabetes risk by nearly 6 in 10 over just 3 years. Prevention, it turns out, starts where you'd least expect, at the kitchen table. Source: Intensive lifestyle intervention reduced incidence of type 2 diabetes by 58% over 3 years in the Diabetes Prevention Program. And remission, no longer some fringe fantasy. A full year of dialing back carbs dropped average HbA1c by over a point, and more than half the group slipped under 6.5% without touching their meds. Source: In a 12-month randomized trial, participants on a low-carbohydrate diet achieved a mean HbA1c reduction of 1.2%, and 53% reached HbA1c 6.5% without medication. Even the big names in diabetes care are nodding now. Keep the weight off, tweak the plate, and some folks can actually undo the damage. Source: The ADA Standards of Care 2023 state that sustained weight loss and dietary modification can lead to diabetes remission in some individuals. The takeaway: metabolic labs and continuous glucose monitors aren't some fancy add-on. They're the new first line of defense. Almost 34 million Americans are living with diabetes right now, and for plenty of them, remission isn't some pipe dream. Source: Approximately 34.2 million Americans have diabetes. Remission is achievable with sustained lifestyle changes and weight loss. The breakthrough we've been waiting for. It's not hiding in a lab, it's in asking the right questions at your next checkup, strapping on a CGM and pushing for meal plans that fit you, not some one-size-fits-all dogma. This is about you, your tomorrow, so what's the holdup? Hit subscribe and let's dig into the research that's flipping the script on real, lasting change.